everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video with my Audi R8. And as you can see behind me, I am joined by another R8. This is Vish's V10 manual. And in today's video, I'm going to try my best to answer the question whether or not you should go out and buy a V8 or if you should simply go out and buy a V10. This, of course, is Audi's or Lamborghini's naturally aspirated 5.2 V10 as opposed to my 4.2 V8. But which one's better? Let's find out. So here we have both the cars in their glory, and how good do they look together, especially the V10 with that kind of sticky out side blade. But we are joined by the owner, Vish.
Morning.
Hiya, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming onto the channel and thanks for bringing your lovely V10.
It's a pleasure.
So how long have you owned it?
I've only owned this one a week yesterday, in fact.
Oh, nice.
I've spent around nine and a half months trying to track down my sort of perfect specification V10 manual coupe. Very few times I've almost considered going S-tronic or cabriolet just to try and get myself into one quicker, but I just held out until I could find that proper unicorn manual coupe spec. A few came up that sort of didn't quite meet my requirements or didn't quite have the sort of history or the maintenance I was looking for, and then this one popped up 2 weeks ago today. In fact, as soon as it went live, I called the seller Bruce, got a really good feel for him, and clearly he loved it and cherished it, and the history sold the car for me. Really well maintained, and went to go and get it last Friday. Lovely.
What did you have before?
Before this, I had a brief fling with an E93 M3.
Oh, nice.
I've had a couple of those, really like them. Before that, it was a Litchfield tuned Nissan GTR,
Bloody hell.
around 680, 690 brake, which was a bit of a sort of a rebound, if you will, from my first R8. I had the 4.2 litre V8 coupe manual. Sold it regrettably and thought I'll just get myself a GTR to have some fun. And it didn't quite work out. I had it for 6 months, but I just missed the R8 far too much, and I don't regret getting back in one.
No. And I've got to say, it's a lovely spec, as I will show everyone now. So V10 Gen 1 manual with carbon fibre side blades, carbon fibre engine bay, and the carbon interior, just like mine. Now, I'm also trying to decide whether or not I should personally upgrade from a V8 to a V10, and the fact this is manual, just like mine, I just had to get you on the channel. Your car's also not standard, is it? What exhaust has it got? Yeah,
so it's got a Larini exhaust, which regrettably isn't valved, so it's quite loud on a cold start. But the trade-off for that is once it's up to temperature and you take it for a run on full chat, as we'll hopefully hear, it's just phenomenal. You wouldn't be wrong for thinking it was straight piped almost.
My God.
Absolutely gorgeous.
That reminds me of my Quicksilver I had on my previous V8. It was just noise constantly. There was no shutting it up at all. But what I think we'll do is, seeming as the V8 came first, we'll jump out in my car and then into Vish's and just try and compare, really.
So this has been mapped?
Yeah, apparently it's 450 odd brake, but welcome to my V8. Now, you mentioned you also had a V8
Yes.
prior to your V10 manual, so this must be very nostalgic for you. And
Yes.
yours had the same exhaust, didn't it?
Same exhaust, but
Top
not
Gear
the same,
F1.
not the same breakneck power as this. That pulls a lot stronger than my V8 did.
Even in comparison to my previous V8, I mean, that car was, as you all know, scrap, but that didn't feel anywhere near as quick as this. And I think that's why I struggle to try and justify the extra 20, 25 grand or so jump from this to a V10.
Absolutely. That is such a healthy pull as well. I think, have you had the carbon cleaning done on this, the inlets?
I haven't in my ownership, but apparently, even though there's no invoices for it, the guy who painted it really took care of it, and he had it done quite a lot.
I say, to make that sort of power it's made and the way it pulls, that feels so crisp. My V8 had 50 I think, 1,000 miles, around that amount.
Yeah.
No evidence of a carbon clean.
Right.
And while strong and healthy, it didn't have that same just urgency as this does. That's really impressive.
It is actually, especially the car's no garage queen. It's on 80,000 miles, but it's
running healthy.
Even it surprises me, and the sound of it as well. It's over 6,000 RPM. That it really sounds crisp like an F1 car. It is absolutely fantastic. Like I said off camera, I have proper mood swings whether what to do with this car. That's why some of you have seen it on Auto Trader and assume that I am selling it. I'm not. It's just it was free to re-advertise on Auto Trader. So if someone wants to give me 35 grand for it, well, I'm not going to stop them. Although they won't be taking it without a fight, because I do love it. I think I just leave it parked in the garage and I forget about it, and then I drive it and I think, oh, this is bloody good.
Absolutely.
It's just when it breaks, it costs
That's
thousands.
That's
like
it. Yeah.
my aircon,
But when they're working again, you just forgive them instantly. As soon as you get in and you just take for a drive, especially with that top gear exhaust, that is phenomenal. You can't beat the click-clack of that shifter.
the gearbox is incredible. Oh, it just sounds so good.
That's impressive.
When I'm personally looking for a V10, I kind of think my budget would kind of get me into a V10 R-Tronic Spider, because they're in the low 40s now.
Yes, yeah.
The kind of market seems to be up and down whether or not cars are worth it or whether they're selling or things like that. But a V10 manual just seems like a little bit more of a further push away. Less accessible than the R-Tronic, but also a greater investment.
I think
to have a V10 manual.
And I think that's the problem with them. I think everyone is sort of holding on to them now. It's the last of the manual NA supercars in a sense. Everything is going turbo or dual clutch. There's very few cars now where you can get a Lamborghini engine with a manual gearbox, but with Audi running costs as well. It's just it's the perfect package, and trying to find them, they're like hen's teeth, and I think people are holding on to them.
That's it.
But a nice sort of in between is the manual Spider, potentially.
Yes.
They're sort of in between the R-Tronics and the coupes.
Yeah.
And you get that lovely manual box, but then you also get that
The
just
roof down,
breathtaking intake noise.
which I think I would love a Spider. After having two coupes, I think I would like to try a Spider.
Absolutely.
Just to make it feel a bit different. You can also put that window down. So it's like if you're in the market for a V8 or a V10 and you can get a V10 now, whilst they're at a decent value, they're only going to go up.
Hopefully.
It's just probably my circumstances would get me into an R-Tronic, which I've driven an R-Tronic many years ago. I can't really remember what it was like.
Well, it's good that you don't remember it being bad.
Yeah, but a lot of people slate the R-Tronics heavily.
Yeah.
However, I've also heard if you know how to drive them, and you can even get the box remapped, that they're perfectly fine, to be fair. I imagine it's like driving an Aventador in Corsa. It's just like doof like that.
I think,
constantly.
like you say, if you understand how the R-Tronic box works and you preempt it, you understand that it's not an instant gear change, and you have to think about the gear changes. Then I think, like you say, you can go.
Should we have a first gear pull?
Go on then.
Cool.
Oh. Yeah, that is no standard.
That's a little bit quicker than my S2000.
That is a lot a bit quicker than my V8. All right.
Really?
Definitely, it's so much more sort of gut of the stomach, just punching you in the chest.
I don't know if it bogged down there because of traction or what, but
possibly, yeah.
Yeah, but
that is impressive. That is a lot more punchy. So my V8 had it on a dyno. I believe it was pulling 380 brake.
Oh, okay.
Like I say, not been carbon clean, not been remapped.
Yeah.
And I was told that's about average, really, for them of that age and mileage.
Yeah. Maybe I should get this dynoed then.
Potentially, because
he said 450 brake, and to be fair, it feels like 450, but
it definitely does feel over the 400 mark. Yeah, that is urgent, isn't it?
Oh, this is a good road.
Yep. My comparison of this to the V10 would be the way it revs up and the power delivery is very much the same. It doesn't. it doesn't feel too dissimilar, if that makes sense. Obviously, this has been mapped and it's probably got probably has had the walnut blasting, like you say, so it's peak fitness, so to speak. Whereas mine is stock. It has had the walnut blasting, but hasn't been mapped. Right. And the power delivery is very similar. If anything, it's just the noise, really. And obviously, there's going to be a few tens of horsepower difference, but the noise is different. Whereas this, it pulls the same. It's got that same familiar torque in the sort of stomach. My stock V8, and I imagine a lot of stock V8 owners, was still a very capable, fast, gorgeous engine. This isn't how mine felt, and ones I've been in before didn't have this same grunt, if you know what I mean. And that was the difference for me between the V8 and the V10, both in stock form, was that extra grunt.
Okay.
Whereas with this is really quite impressive.
This seems like a very healthy engine.
Yeah, it's just grunty.
Comparing it to my previous car had half the miles. It's on 40k. But we all know there was well, I don't know if I actually mentioned it in a video. What caused the fire was a fuel injector.
Oh, wow.
I've messed this angle up, I think. So it was a fuel injector issue that the garage had changed under warranty and changed poorly, which caused a fire. So maybe it was carbon clogged and the injectors weren't as efficient as they should be. Maybe all those factors just made it. That car honestly felt like it had about, if that car had 300 brake horsepower, that'd be generous. Wow.
Well, that's it. This thing is just impressive. This is a testament to what that V8 can do when it's been maintained properly and given its full range of power as well, because
absolutely,
that is very impressive. I think it'd be really interesting to get it on the dyno and see, and just be able to gauge then what this has, and then you can sort of think, oh, well, if this is 450, am I only going to get an extra 50, 60, maybe 70 horsepower from a V10?
Yeah.
Whereas
Not really worth it.
Most people would get an extra 120, 150 horsepower, give or take, depending on their.
I think for me, the appeal of the V10 is the Lamborghini sound. And where I work, I'm quite accustomed to Lamborghinis. And I've driven many Lamborghinis, but I can't afford one.
Yeah.
So maybe like the 50 odd grand kind of mark to get me into the same engine.
Well, that's what we were saying earlier.
Drive it how I want, because it's my car. I can't drive their cars how I want. But maybe that's the appeal to me as well. But also,
I completely agree with that. For me, one of the things that puts the smile on my face most with that car is that exhaust note and that engine. The power was great, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I've had more powerful cars, less powerful cars. But the noise, like you say, you almost think, God, there's a straight pipe Lamborghini behind me, I better get out of the way. And then you realise it's you making that noise.
I'm absolutely itching to get into a V10 manual, so I think we should pull over and jump into your car and see what that's like.
Sounds like a plan.
So as you can see, we've swapped positions, and now instead of the 4.2 V8 behind us, we have the 5.2 V10 behind us. And I just said to you, this is so weird because it sounds like we're in a Lambo, but then I'm reminded that we're in the same platform as my car. It does sound great.
That's the thing, that the novelty for me hasn't worn off yet. Obviously, it's only been a week, and I hope it doesn't wear off. It does feel like you're in a Lambo, so to speak, and for all intents and purposes, you are. It's a Lambo in an Audi frock, really.
Everything in here just looks a little bit better condition than my car as well. I think I need a retrim.
So this is just ticked over 42,000 now. So yeah, I guess
pretty much half then, I suppose.
I guess so that in that regard, wear and tear and that kind of thing are probably a little less noticeable at the moment, at least.
So the thing with our cars, we've got identical specs, apart from the seats. But mine were added, I suppose. You've got the interior carbon, Alcantara headlining.
Yep.
The fundamental difference is that big powerhouse behind us, which sounds so good. Oh, that let off is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, the overrun just gorgeous.
That sounds. Ooh, that Larini exhaust does sound good.
Like I said earlier in the video, it's a trade-off for Asbo cold start versus pure V10 just sound as you get through the rev range. One thing I do like, I was worried about with it being a valveless exhaust, was drone, but when you're in the sort of lower gears, You can hear it, but it's not really.
It's not too bad.
It's
No.
not the worst, especially at 70 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour. Between the wind noise and the radio, you don't really notice it, to be fair.
Bloody hell. It's definitely urgent.
Yeah, for me, the drama of it is what makes it
Yeah.
so much fun. It could have half the power, but if it still made that noise,
Yeah.
I think it would still be just as exciting. It's just...
I think from my point of view, that is the biggest and most noticeable difference between the V8 and the V10.
Especially with yours, like I said, with yours is punching well above its weight for
Yeah.
that sort of. From my experience with the V8 and having been in others with that 4.2 V8, they didn't have the urgency and just the relentless power through the rev range that yours had. So I think yours is almost halfway between the V10 and a stock V8, really. So
Yeah.
I can see for yourself why the dilemma's even greater.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get the full upgrade, if anything. You're sort of halfway there already.
Yeah. Oof.
Still getting used to the rev match.
This
and the
does
clutch.
seem like it has got more theatre and a bit more character. I suppose being Lamborghini engined,
Yeah.
you get that, but for a fraction of the price. Just sounds more beefy, whereas mine's quite high pitched and
Yeah.
screams. This is just, it sounds like power.
That's it. It's, I did want the F1 exhaust on this after having it on my V8 because I do love the, hence the name, F1 sound,
Yeah.
that high-pitched scream as it goes through the revs. But I must admit, this Larini has quite impressed me with that raging bull grunt, if you
Yeah.
will, rather than a pure high-pitched scream. So I'm just on the fence what I'm going to do about the exhaust.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Especially because you've bought it and it's already
Yes,
been
exactly.
modified. It's kind of harder to justify.
That's the
I
thing,
think
the
you
outlay.
you need to find someone with a V10 F1
Absolutely.
and just hear that.
I think for me, my only complaint is the cold start. When it's in the garage with that nearly straight piped exhaust, it just booms the garage. And even inside the car, the whole car, you can just, obviously because it's inside a building, the whole car is just there fizzing and bubbling away. And I feel really sorry for the neighbours, to be honest. I love it, but I feel really bad for the neighbours. I think one thing to consider, actually, if we're talking about is it worth going from the V8 to the V10?
Yeah.
I guess you've covered exhaust notes and the cost, but maybe the maintenance and running costs and common
Yeah,
problems.
true.
Because there are some pros and cons to the V10, namely the aircon compressor is much easier to change.
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that because in the V8, like I've just had mine done, you are supposed to drop the engine.
Exactly.
But I've heard in the V10 there's a lot more space
Apparently,
to get it
yeah.
out. So then, if your aircon compressor went bad in this, your bill would have been cheaper than my bill.
Exactly.
But then things like on the V8, when the arms and the bushes go,
Yep.
I believe they don't make them anymore, so you have to upgrade to V10 ones,
That's
which
it.
cost thousands.
Well, I have heard there's a company, and I think it might be in Poland, I can't remember, that are now remanufacturing them, but that's
Yeah.
a case of sending your arms off or sending a set to them.
Yeah.
So you either have to buy a second set or have your car off the road for a
They
number
do
of
that
weeks.
for the mag rides.
For the mag
don't
rides
they?
as
Yes.
well, yeah. I don't think it's the same company, but
No.
seemingly out there, maybe they're a little bit more willing to keep things going, whereas we just seem to say,
Yeah.
oh, no, throw it away.
Yeah. So it's a cheap option to repair what you've got,
Yes,
or kind of refurbish what you've got, then replace.
just
But
the
I have
downtime, of
heard,
course.
Yeah, I have heard.
But yeah, like you say,
Really expensive.
you've got the ball joints on the V8s that can tend to go. Oil on these still suffer with the oil cooler lines.
All right.
So that's unfortunately still a problem.
Yeah, I've done mine.
There you go. Once they're done and hopefully uprated, they won't be a problem.
Yeah.
These also suffer with, which this had done. So on the MOT, it had an oil leak last year, I think. So the previous owner took it down to the genius that is Ricky at RE Performance, and it's something to do with the oil pump. Oil pump.
Right.
I don't know if it's the shaft to the oil pump itself leaks. So that was all done down there. Don't believe that. Well, I've not heard of that issue on the V8s. Actually, we'll carry on. Not heard of that issue on the V8s, but on the V10s apparently it's quite common. Gens 2 as well, they do it. So there's pros and cons to each.
Yeah.
Running cost-wise, obviously 2 extra spark plugs, 2 extra coil packs.
Yeah. I think
So-
they're relatively fairly similar. I mean, the
think so,
brakes
yeah.
are the same. I'm
Brakes
pretty
are the
sure.
same, yeah. Should give that V10 another little
Oh, go on
chance
then.
to stretch its legs.
It just sounds like a Hurricane.
It's beautiful.
And I can't afford a Hurricane.
Well, that's where these cars fit in just perfectly, because it is underneath a Lamborghini Gallardo essentially, but just with the Audi running cost.
I know the R-Tronic box gets a lot of stick, but just to think you can buy this engine at the minute for the low 40s,
it's just
insane. It's a bit of a joke, really, isn't it?
Just crazy when you think there's M3 and M4s that are costing that much with an engine that likes to get through turbos and all sorts.
Yeah, and that's where the temptation is for me, because I'm like, oh, just for £8,000, just a little bit more, I could just get into a V10. But no, my car, which I've sunk about, it's got to be almost, or if in fact 10 grand into it, just fixing bits and pieces, when I think I could then have that same bill for a V10.
That's the problem.
That's the terrifying part. So here we are then, after an exhilarating morning in both cars. I guess I'm supposed to now offer some kind of helpful consumer advice as to which car you should go for. Now, it's not very helpful, but it very much depends on yourself. If you've got the money, by all means, go for the V10. It's probably a better investment. As we mentioned in the video, they're fairly similar running costs, and you're getting a 5.2 V10 for not much money. And especially if you get a manual, it's just going to be a great investment. But if you're also, maybe it's your first R8, or you just kind of want to dip your toe into the kind of affordable supercar world, then by all means, the V8 is the perfect car. And what I found in today's video is I'm quite surprised how alert and immediate my engine actually is, and how in some ways it kind of matches the V10. I don't think there's all that much power increase difference that you would really notice under your right foot. A massive thank you for Vish for agreeing to be on today's video and bringing his car. And I think for me personally, as my kind of vision into the future, whether or not I will be selling my V8 or not, I think today's helped me kind of come to some kind of realization that I am deeply grateful to even own this car in the first place, and to see it parked up in my garage. I think there is this kind of little voice in the back of my head that has been just teasing, jump into a V10, go on, you know you want to. However, as good as the V10 is, I do think I have an incredible package that I can afford in the V8, rather than having to find an extra 25 grand to get into a car with 2 more cylinders. But anyway guys, that is where I'm going to end today's video. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you found it somewhat useful. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and of course if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell so you do not miss out on any of my future upcoming content with the R8, with my garage renovation, and also I have just purchased a new car. If you follow me on Instagram, you would of course already know what that is, but I am soon to be making a video on that. Thank you very much once again for watching guys. Thank you as always for the support, and I'll see you in the next one.